over a picture. I feel like it matches pretty well. Looks like to me.
Oh, do you know how to put this thing up?
So, yeah, there's a switch on the wall, the white one. Yeah, just switch that to laptop or something to make that disappear.
Okay, so our science terms that relate to this here is it's a not quite a xylem, but parts of inside of a plant and where it takes up its nutrients and water. So the first word is xylem. Has anyone heard this word before? Yeah. Okay. Cool. So xylems take up the water into the cell and help that get the water to the leaves. We also have the phloem. This is my new favorite word. So the phloem is somewhat related to the xylem, where it takes up the food, so sugars and carbs. The xylem also takes up minerals, which is so some of the minerals that plants need is our typical what's P stand for? Phosphorus. What's N stand for? Nitrogen and K? Potassium. K. So those are the three main elements that the plants need. So the xylem takes that up. Our other word, microscope. So I don't know what level this went to get this image, but using your microscope to stain cells, all that to look at the closer image, and then cell/cell wall. Okay, this is more than just one cell. This is multiple, but you can see the division between the areas. So this top part is called the cortex. And then down here, I couldn't get good information on this exact image, but somewhere in this area you have your, like these could be the xylem, they could be the phloem, or this could be, depending on what type of plant it is. But that would be the type of cell wall and areas you have there.
So we chose this image based on its like color variation. And so we wanted to choose an image that we could really play with color mixing and finding complements and not complements, and just really mixing with the neutral colors, finding a nice brown and stuff. Another thing that we were looking for was texture. While we were looking at these images, trying to pick one that would be good for the data. And so we wanted one that had, again, a variation of texture. Also, another art term that we were looking for was repetition. So we wanted repeating forms in our image, and that usually works for a good composition, which is another term we had. And composition basically relates to all types of art form, performing arts, musical arts. It's basically the arrangement of your ideas, and in our case, of our shapes that we were given by the arrangement of the xylem or the plant cells that we chose. Do you want to explain more?
So the art terminology, I feel, was more balanced by what we actually have, as Adam was saying. So we had the xylem, the phloem, the minerals, the And so essentially what would happen in the classroom is the kids would have that, and then you get to explain what they're seeing within that image in artistic terms, such as color variation, texture, repetition, a form. A lot of that procedural stuff can occur through the science. So the terminology attaches itself to what we're already seeing, rather than having the terminology and trying to attach it to what we've seen, right? So it's kind of, you want to have it work in that kind of conceptual way. So I feel like what we were using ended up working very well to get that to correlate in that sense. So, should I move on to?
Yeah, we can start talking about the article that we read. It basically was the introduction to what we all read, and it's basically how incorporating art into STEM is a very important thing for basically future thinking, future ideas, incorporating new ideas into designing of buildings, objects, things that we use, more functional stuff. And one thing that the beginning of the article really stressed on was it's like sparking that creativity in science, technology, and engineering, math. It can lead to higher order thinking, new orders of thinking that haven't really been thought of yet, I guess, and just kind of, that's how we advance. We're not going to advance if we just keep going over the same stuff over and over again. And so having creativity, having students see things in new ways is a great way for them to possibly come up with new ideas. So that's kind of what the article stressed a lot in the beginning.
Yeah, and then a little bit further into the article, it talked about how you have an engineering process and you have an art process and how they're very similar and related. The first step is considering the problem. What do you have to resolve? And that relates both to art. What are you making and what does an engineer have to make? Then you get to the benefits and drawbacks of the different ideas that you come up with. How different, using the silk or using a canvas, the material choices, engineers, are you using steel, or are you using graphite? I don't know many composites in engineering, but the different composites you can use. Then you get to your design options. Do you want to do the image like this? Do you want to do it in our round samplers? Design ideas for engineers. Do you want the wheels to be completely round? Do you want them to have edges? Then you have your prototypes, and then you get to your testing and your evaluating of what you made, and those processes relate both to the engineering and the art side of it. A big thing I talked about was problem-based learning, where you can take this to either problem-based learning school or have it in your lesson on not just taking an art idea or a science idea and making art with it, but they're learning a xylem, they're learning the plant and how they take up their nutrients. Okay, so let's apply this more. I want you to show these specific details in your picture that you drew. And that it's not only talking about the art and the design, but the content and the process of conveying the information. So this is a new way of looking at how your plants take up nutrients. Not just looking at a diagram in your book, but creating it again, looking at it in a different process.
New perspectives.
So then later in the article, it speaks about some of the drawbacks and the benefits for these kinds of activities, which can end up occurring because, as you all know, students really enjoy creative arts, and so if they walk away with just the creative side of it, they're not really benefiting from the entire process of using this integrated STEM kind of program. So the problem with that is, well, some of the benefits is within the arts, there's tons of artists that work specifically with the sciences. They use science to, say, weave a basket in order to understand constellations and everything. There's a great example inside the article of that. Which the concept gets across, but if all the kids get it is that they're crafting a basket, they're crafting a basket. So you have to be aware of the fact that there are some attributes to this and there's some disadvantages to this. If students are, and then another thing that it said was that you end up playing lip service to either one of.
You can just pay lip service. So we can say that we're doing an art science integration piece, but only create an art piece and not talk so much about the science aspect. And that, you just have to be careful about it and try hard to make both integration pieces known to the students, not just focus on one.
Yeah, so you want to make sure you're making that full circle back to the end of your overall agenda, is that it has to be about both. It can't just be about one or the other, or end up just leaving the kids with one or the other. Because then that's really.
You're not integrating
beneficial.
anything,
You're not
you're just
integrating.
making one or the other.
You just end up making an art project, or you end up making a science project, but in the end, you're not making an art and science integration. And so you have to be very focused on what you end up doing with these kinds of things, because they can fall into those kind of